Hi, I'm Chad with Move Forward Guitar. This lesson is from our series, How to Memorize Guitar Notes. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how you can memorize the notes on your fretboard by something I call Triads with Incre Notes. First off, if you like all the diagrams from this series, including the diagrams from this lesson, you can download our free e-guide, Memorize Guitar Notes. But I am working on it right now as I'm filming this lesson, so it might not be available as you're watching the lesson. But once it is available, a link will pop up on the screen that will allow you to download it. And like I said, it's free, so there's no reason not to download it when it is available. This is part 20 from our series, How to Memorize Guitar Notes. If you'd like to go back and start at the beginning, you can click the link on the screen. So again, in this lesson, we're going to use triads to help memorize the notes up and down the fretboard. And again, this is going to help you not only with memorizing the notes, but much more in your development in music. It's something really useful that'll help you out down the road. And again, if you don't understand triads, watch our series, Music Theory for Guitar, where I explain everything you need to know about triads to take this lesson. So this is something I call Triads with Incre Note. And I'm sure there's people who've done this many times before. I've just never seen it done, so I just came up with a little exercise doing this, and I just came up with a name just to be able to call it something for this lesson. So what we're going to do is start with a triad, and we're going to start on the 6th, 5th, and 4th string this time instead of the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And I'll just keep it with the C major triad to keep it simple. And what you're going to do is play the triad, and then you're going to keep this lowest note as your anchor note, meaning that's not going to change. And then you're going to pick another note that's not going to change with it. So if we choose the E, the C and the E are going to stay there the whole time as we go through this first part of the exercise. And then we're going to move the G note to all the other string options. And the goal is to be able to hold this and play this as a chord or arpeggiate it as a chord. So you'd be holding these two notes and then just moving this note. And you could strum it as a chord if you could beat out the other strings, or just pick each note individually so that you're really hearing it as a triad. And that'll really help you musically for hearing different voicing options you can get. For example, this is just a close position triad with all the notes as close as possible. Once you start moving the notes around, then it's creating open triads and so on, and really changes the sound even though you're still using the same notes. And that's something really useful to be able to do to come up with different voicings and much more on the guitar. But if you can't make these stretches, it's all right to play these notes one at a time. So first, like I said, we're just going to keep the C and E in place, and we're going to move the G around. So the G can only move to the 3rd, 2nd, or 1st string. Basically as close as possible so that you can try and reach it. You could reach a G up here on the same string, which is an octave higher, but that's pretty much an impossible reach. So if we move it to the next string down towards the floor, it'd be right there on the 12th fret. So if you play that together as a triad, you'd be able to hear what that sounded like. Then you could do it to the next string. That's actually a fairly easy one to play. It's a lot closer. Then you could do it to the next string. That's a really big stretch. Unless you have a good stretch, you probably won't be able to reach that. So if it's really hard for you, don't even try it. Just play the notes individually. And like I said, you're going to, for one thing, be able to hear how cool these sound just by moving one note around to different octaves. So it creates different distances between these two notes and the note you're moving around. So it's creating different voicings, different chord voicings. But also what you really want to do is visualize that you're moving this note. So for example, when you're starting with the G here, you visualize where that G is, but then you really have to visualize where the next G's are on the other strings. And that takes a lot of work to be able to do, and keep holding these knowing that you're playing a C and an E on those spots. Then once you've moved the G around, you keep your C as the anchor note, that one's never moving, and then you're keeping the G along with it, and then you're going to move the E around. So if I'm keeping the C and G, the E can only move to the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st string. So I would move it from the 5th string to the 3rd string. It'd be right there. That wouldn't be too hard of a stretch. Then I move it to the 2nd string. It'd be right there. That's not too bad, although it might be kind of tough for you if you're not used to it. Then I can move it to the 1st string, and that's a really big stretch, so don't try it if you struggle with it. Just play it one at a time. And again, you're going to be able to hear different voicings and how cool it sounds, and give you more ideas for playing stuff on the guitar, more ideas for playing different voicings of chords, but you're also really having to visualize where this E is on all those other strings while visualizing that you're holding a C and a G on those two spots. Then you can change the order. You keep the C as your anchor note still, but instead of playing E next and G next, you could play G next and then E. So it's just another voicing of a C major triad. So instead of it being C, E, G, it's C, G, E. Still the same notes, just in a different order. And it just creates a totally different sound even though it's the same chord. And again, this will help you come up with cool stuff, but it's also going to help you find where all these notes are. So again, C is your anchor note, but then you can keep the G as the note that stays along with it, and just move your E around to the other strings and find where those land. Try to hold it as a chord and really listen to it. You're going to come up with really cool sounds, but also really have to visualize where these notes are landing. And then you can just try to come up with as many options as possible, moving both the notes besides the C, because the C is your anchor note, which there aren't many options left. Then what you can do is play a triad and have your anchor note on the first string now instead of the sixth string. So if we keep it in the same fret, you could play this triad, which is a first inversion triad, and do the same thing. Just start with the C as your anchor note. Pick another note that you're going to keep with it. For example, I can keep the C with it, and then I can move the G around and find different places that will work, and that I can hold it as a chord together, and you're going to come up with really cool sounds, but also really help you visualize where these notes are. And that was just root position. You could do it through the inversion, so that would be first inversion there, and this time instead of keeping your C, you could keep your E as your anchor note. Then you could do it with second inversion, do the same thing, keep your G as your anchor note instead of your C, and do the same thing. You're going to come up with really cool voicings, and it's really going to force you to find where these notes are on your fretboard. And then of course you can do it with the minor triad, diminished triad, augmented triad, and then move it to other keys. And again, this is just another tool, another exercise that'll really help you not only find the notes, but you'll also develop your musicality a ton by doing these exercises. So that's how you can memorize the notes on your fretboard by playing triads with Incre Notes. Go ahead and move on to the next lesson where I'm going to show you how you can memorize notes by learning and playing licks. And be sure to download the e-guide. All the diagrams are in there, and be sure to subscribe because we had at least one new lesson every day.